Eiko rushed to Komori and Sakusa, while Atsumu stood in the doorway, as if he was frozen to the spot. He couldn't move an inch, because the situation overwhelmed him so much. Eiko took a deep breath, and gave Sakusa instructions on how to help her. What happened? He was attacked with a knife, and stabbed 2 times in the back. He lost a lot of blood, and lost consciousness just a few seconds ago. I've already called the doctor, but until he arrives we have to do something. Eiko cleaned Komori's wound, and tried to stop further bleeding. Blood unit A negative and a saline solution. Sakusa nodded and ran to get the things. Atsumu, you have to help me. Atsumu was brought back from his shock by Eiko and nodded cautiously. He helped Eiko treat Komori. A little later Sakusa was back with the needed things. It didn't take long for Eiko to finish stabilizing Komori until the doctor arrived. Every move she made was perfect. Half an hour later Komori woke up again. Eiko and Sakusa hurried to his side. Mori, slow down. Komori gave them a smile, but immediately contorted his face as he tried to move a little. You guys are making a face like someone died. Sakusa clicked his tongue and sat down in exhaustion and relief. Resting his arms on his thighs he put his head in his hands. He exhaled deeply. Fuck. Komori. Atsumu came to Komori's bedside and smiled at him, hiding his hands in his pockets. He was still shaking a bit and was kind of dazed by the whole situation. It's good to see that you're doing good, Komori. Komori smiled back. Do you really think you can get rid of me so easily? Sakusa gave Komori a furious and angry look. He didn't feel like laughing at all. Don't you ever do that again. Do you hear me? Komori was still smiling. Sakusa's bad mood didn't seem to bother him, or he was just used to it. Yes, it's alright. I was a little careless for a moment, I admit, Komori. We can't afford to be careless for a moment. Sakusa raised his voice and didn't take his eyes off Komori. He stood up and walked towards his cousin. Komori's look now also becoming a bit more serious. Nothing happened, okay? Sakusa clenched his hands into fists, but immediately loosened them again when a thin person with soft hands touched his arm. Eiko. Sakusa looked at her in shock. She could barely hold back her tears. Sakusa frowned and looked at her in torment, then exhaled deeply and walked to the door. Miya, let's get dinner ready. Call me Atsumu. Whatever. Atsumu ran after Sakusa and turned around one last time before closing the door. There he could see Eiko falling into Komori's arms, her tears now running freely. Atsumu smiled. It's Komori you like, isn't it? Once in the kitchen, there was silence between Sakusa and Atsumu at first, until Atsumu broke it. So what happened exactly? Sakusa didn't take his eyes off cutting vegetables. He hesitated for a moment before telling Atsumu everything. We found someone who might have a connection to 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅. We were separated and eavesdropping on different people until Komori found a woman who might have something to do with 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅. Komori wanted to get closer to her and I told him to wait until I got to him. Atsumu frowned. She was about to leave, that's why Komori wanted to go after her. Then the connection broke and the next thing I see is Komori bleeding and barely able to stand on his feet. Sakusa slammed the knife into the cutting board, causing Atsumu to wince and his eyes to widen. Oh boy. He was angry. This idiot didn't notice that someone had followed him just because he was so focused on this woman. He just managed to escape his chaser, and if I had come just a few minutes later, it would have been too late. Sakusa ran his hands through his hair. He was frustrated that he couldn't help Komori faster. Sakusa was shaking all over. Atsumu was frowning. He put a hand on Sakusa's shoulder, which made him wince. Sakusa abruptly turned to Atsumu and looked into his eyes in panic. Atsumu pressed his eyebrows together. Sakusa was always the strong one. He didn't show any fear and always seemed so calm. And now he was standing in front of Atsumu. Terrified, fearful, anxious. Omi, he's fine. Atsumu's heart sank. It was killing him to see Sakusa like this. He pulled Sakusa into a hug, trying to calm the bigger boy down. Sakusa's eyes widened as Atsumu hugged him. His heart pounded, his breathing slowed down, and he noticed himself becoming calmer. He was overwhelmed by Atsumu's warmth and closeness, and fell completely silent. Atsumu closed his eyes, and didn't let go of Sakusa. He just wanted to get rid of the fear inside him until he suddenly opened his eyes again, immediately letting go of Sakusa and stepping back a few steps. His face was totally flushed and he looked into Sakusa's perplexed face. Oh god, what am I doing? Atsumu rubbed the back of his head, his gaze now tilted to the floor in shame. Sorry. A hug from Samu always helped me calm down. I know you don't really like people near you, but thank you. Atsumu raised his gaze and sank into Sakusa's dark eyes. He smiled weakly at him before going back to chopping vegetables. Sure. Atsumu's heart pounded and his face turned even redder. It was always the same. As soon as he was near Sakusa he became so incredibly nervous. A little later, Atsumu and Sakusa brought dinner to Eiko and Komori. As Atsumu opened the door, he saw Komori and Eiko chatting and making each other laugh. He smiled. Is anyone hungry in here? Atsumu. Kyo. Eiko jumped up and took something from each of them. She brought Komori a plate and then sat back down next to him at the bed. Atsumu and Sakusa followed her. The four friends ate comfortably and talked about what to do next. The woman spoke something about the art exhibition in a month. We should try again to find her or Siki there. Sakusa, Atsumu and Eiko nodded. I don't know if I'll be back on my feet by then. Will Atsumu accompany you? Atsumu's eyes sparkled as he took a bite of a rice ball, looking at the two men startled. I'm going alone. No. Nope, out of the question. Komori needs to rest, you'd best stay with him, and Atsumu isn't ready for something that big yet. Atsumu grimaced as he ate and gave Sakusa an annoyed look. What does that mean? It means that you're not ready yet. I was born ready. If I'm taking you with me, I might as well take an elephant with me. It's just as inconspicuous as you are. Atsumu's chin dropped at Sakusa's sarcastic answer. He looked at him aghast, which made Eiko giggle. Oh come on Kyo, Atsumu is a natural. The last few times he was with me, he did a really good job. You don't have to be a natural to be better than you, Komori. Komori scoffed, grabbed a pillow, and hurled it at Sakusa. Fuck you Kyo. All four of them had to laugh. Atsumu persuaded Sakusa for a while longer, until he finally relented. Take me with you Omi. I'll show you how good I am. Fine. You'll accompany me on my next missions to prove yourself. If everything goes well I will take you to the art exhibition. Yay. I'll show you. For the next few weeks, Atsumu accompanied Sakusa on almost every mission. Mainly it was about spying on people and collecting information. Sometimes they had to steal small things for Eiko's father. Sakusa had to admit it, Atsumu was really a natural and almost as talented as he was. He really enjoyed being with Atsumu. With him every job was an easy game. The friendship between the two grew stronger and stronger. While Sakusa was rather the quiet type, Atsumu babbled mostly all the time about everything that came through his mind. Although Sakusa pretended not to pay attention to Atsumu and that it would annoy him that Atsumu talked so much, he actually enjoyed it. For the first time in a long time, Atsumu gave him the feeling of being a free man and not having to live in fear all the time. Time passed quickly and tomorrow was already the art exhibition. Atsumu and Sakusa had gathered some more information and were now on their way back home. Omi, what a beautiful sunset. Sakusa smiled and nodded. Want to see something breathtaking? Atsumu looked at Sakusa questioningly. Sakusa chuckled. Follow me. They made their way to a secluded patch of woods. In the middle of it hid an old ruin. Do you still have enough strength to climb up? Seriously? Atsumu grinned at Sakusa and ran towards the walls to pull himself up with a swinging movement. Sakusa was impressed with how easy it looked on Atsumu and copied him. When he reached the rooftop, Atsumu stopped in shock. His eyes widened. He was amazed as he could look over the rest of the forest and the whole city, which was just immersed in the orange of the sunset. It was clearly breathtaking. Sakusa watched Atsumu and chuckled at the sight of how overwhelmed Atsumu seemed to be. He sat on the wall of the rooftop and let his legs dangle in the air. Beautiful, isn't it? Atsumu sat next to Sakusa, his gaze not detached from the city and the sunset. I'm speechless. Sakusa couldn't take his eyes off the blonde boy. Atsumu's eyes sparkled, his lips parted a bit, and his cheeks were a little red from the evening chill. For Sakusa, this was the most beautiful view he could get. Sakusa smiled slightly and blushed as he found himself being literally absorbed by Atsumu's presence. I come here often. It's nice and quiet, and you can switch off a bit from everyday life. Atsumu hummed, still overwhelmed by the view. Does anyone else know about it? Sakusa shook his head. Just you and me. Atsumu smiled at Sakusa and then turned his gaze back over the city. Sakusa blushed a little. Hey Atsumu, aren't you afraid at all? Atsumu turned his head to Sakusa and smiled at him. Sakusa's heart leapt at the sight, his expression now becoming rather annoyed. What are you laughing at? I think this is the first time you've called me Atsumu. Sakusa winced. It's true. Until now, he always called Atsumu by his last name, mostly just to tease him. Sakusa blushed, which made Atsumu smile a little more. I'm not afraid. As long as you are by my side, I know I can do anything. A cold shiver ran down Sakusa's spine. His eyes were wide open, a sinking feeling in his stomach spread. Sakusa swallowed. This feeling. Sakusa locked his gaze with Atsumu's honey-colored eyes. They literally drew him in. His heart was beating like crazy and the butterflies in his stomach were going wild. Shit. Atsumu, I think I'm falling for you.